So in the last part, we created this view for fragment 1, and we tested it out, and you could see that the start application button was actually working. If we press start application, it would move us to fragment 2, which we didn't start working on yet. So let me just quickly go ahead and explain how that navigation part works. So everything in navigation is going to be in this folder, navigation, navgraph XML. So you can basically see here, if we go into the code, we have two fragments, right? First fragment and second fragment. And in the action, we basically declare what kind of destination is of some action in some fragment. So we see that from fragment 1, we need to eventually go to second fragment. And from fragment 2, we can potentially go to the first fragment if you want to go back to the main screen. So, and the IDs of those actions are right here. So basically, if we do something with this ID, it will theoretically just move us to the second fragment. And I didn't write this myself. It was all in the template. I didn't write anything myself that wasn't covered in this tutorial so far. So if you go to the first fragment, remember here is the actual logic of our code, right? So here in the template, it's already been created, on view created, we can see that we bounded some method on the button first, which is the ID of our button from fragment first, right? So we're just saying that on click, when we click on that button, we go to the navigation host, find the nav controller, and we perform the action that goes from first fragment to second fragment. So that's why when we click on that button, it worked. So now that we know that, let's go ahead and actually create the second fragment. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the outline for second fragment. So far we have the button from the template that we got. So let's change a few things up. I don't want to keep the same white background just so we can see how to like change the color for background, right? So to change the color of background, first we're gonna need to go to the parent. This is our parent node. So here we can just change the background color to, let's say, Android background color. I think just background equals, now let's do black, color black. So you can see the background, or at least the part with the thing, with our elements is gonna be black. But like the problem with this is that we want some of the colors to be consistent throughout the app, right? If we decide one, if we just like one time we decide to like change the color, we'll have to actually go ahead and change the color from like black to blue. Let's say this is like red. Let's see what colors there are. Let's say white, right? So we'll have to go ahead and change from black to white like every single fragment, right? Which can get annoying. So what you want to do is actually create another color, let's say background color, right? That we can actually modify internally and we'll modify it everywhere. So let's just call that screen background. But screen background doesn't exist, right? We need to add it. The same way as we added the string in part 1. We need to go to XML. Oh, my bad. Not values, colors.xml, and then add our color. So far we only have black and white here. Let's add our color. So color name equals the screen background. Let's add some color. Obviously we can go ahead and choose the color from like color picker just to see what we like. Or we can just like come up with like an arbitrary color. So I chose this grayish color. I just copy pasted from the color picker. You can see here, Android Studio actually shows you what it looks like. And we're gonna use this for screen background. Let me spell. Yeah, so now we go back to second fragment. We can see that got changed, right? So if we just use this screen background shortcut, like everywhere, if we just decide to change the color, we can just go to the colors, change it, and it's gonna change it everywhere. It's very modular that way. So now let's go ahead and actually change our button, right? For that, we're gonna keep some of these parts. Let's just like change the margin, change the text, right? So let's go ahead and change the text from screen previous. Let's just say random. And whenever the user will press that button, whenever user presses that button, the random number is going to be generated. Random number is going to be generated. So now let's go ahead and actually add a text view where the random number is actually going to be viewed, right? So let's do a text view. Width is going to be wrap content, basically the same as the button. Let's add an ID, and Android ID equals plus ID, we've done before, right? And ID, text view, second. Or actually, let's give it a more normal name. Random number. Okay, sounds about right. Let's add a margin to the top again, as we did before. Android layout margin top. So about 55 dp. And yeah, let's not forget to like actually enclose our node with backslash angle bracket. Then we can change the color. Let's say this color. Let's say Android text color. Then we can say, let's just make it white, right? Or actually, let's do black. So we'll do color black. So it's just gonna be black. Let's change the text size. Android text size. Text size. Actually, let's put with text first. So let's put the text. Android text. Now it's just gonna be click. Let's say random, which is the button, right? Click random to generate. Okay, seems about right. Let's change the text size. Android text size. Let's make it 55 dp. Just gonna eyeball it for now. Now we can see the constraints are a little messed up, right? So we need to change it. We need to make it constrained with a button. So it's like at the top of the button. So to do that, let's copy paste it from here, because we're gonna have about the same things. So here it's below it. Now we need to put it like on top of it, right? So how are we gonna do it? Let's add an operator to constrained to the top. So we're gonna say app layout constrained bottom to top off. Then we can put an RD button second. Yeah, so now it's at the top. And here we'll need to constrain the button to that text. So let's make it to bottom off. So app layout constraint top to bottom off. Then we can put our ID in here, which is random number, right? And here we need to constrain bottom to top of parent, right? So it's bottom is the top of the parent. So let's add some margin to the top of the button because it's too close to the text. We'll just say layout margin top, and let's do 200 dp. Yeah, even more, maybe 300 dp. Yeah, looks right. So now that we have that, let's test it out, make sure it works. You can press play. Let's test it out. So we press start application. It's going to take us to the screen. But right now, if we press random, as shown previous to in part 1, it will just take us back to the screen. So we're actually going to change the functionality of the random button so that we can generate a random number. So let's go ahead and do that, right? So let's get some logic down. So what needs to be happen is on random number being clicked, we just need to change this text to some random number from 1 to 100, right? So for that, if you remember from part 1, all the logic is in this folder, java.com, com.example number generator. All their logic is going to be here. And every single piece of, and every single class here is attached to its respective fragment. So let's go to segment fragment. And we can see that we already have a function on click. We already have this function there. This function is going to be called whenever we click that button. So right now, as I showed part 1, it's going to find nav controller, basically get the navigation controller, and take us back to the first fragment. And we just need to change it a bit, just so it generates the random number and sets the text view in the second fragment to that random number. So let's go ahead and delete that. And let's start coding. So we'll need an integer, right? A random integer from 1 to 100. So for that, we can use math.random, which is the way to generate a random double from 0 to 1. And for us to get a random number in the range of 100, from 1 to 100, we can multiply by 100 and add 1 to it. And then convert that to an integer, because we need an integer, right? So now that it's done, we can generate a number. If you want to know how it works, you can go ahead and check documentation in Java on how to generate a random number. You can do any kind of Java code. You can put any kind of Java code in here. Then we need to somehow get access to our text view, right? So we'll just say text view, random view, which is the view of our random number, and just say view, which is variable here in the fragment. We can say get root view, which basically have all our elements there, and I can find our element by ID. And we know the ID of our thing, right? Of our text view. And to access it, we can go to R, which we're gonna have all the names and just all the elements, ID dot. We called it random number text view, right? So this way, we'll get our ID here. We'll call the function the root to find the view by ID. Then it's gonna return it. But Android Studio doesn't know what text view is. And this is where Android Studio comes in handy. Obviously, you can go ahead and just see what the problem is, but you can just say show context actions, and it says, there's no class text view class here. So just add it. It's gonna save developers a lot of time. That's why Android Studio is a very nice IDE to use to develop for Android. So next, we have to change that random view text to the random number. So it's all pretty simple. We just say random view dot set text, right? Set the text value to random number, but it has to be in a string, so we can just say toString, which is a way to convert something to string. So now that we got that done, let's go ahead and test the functionality. So we can play the app. You can start application. You can click random to generate. There you go. It generates a random number. So now it's 42, 4, 21, 10. It's working. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you get started with Android Studio. And yeah, stay safe.